Week 15 of the fantasy football season, and with the playoffs starting this week in most fantasy leagues, his running back sits every matchup this week, and these are the decisions fantasy owners have to make in a make-or-break week. Thursday Night Football, Los Angeles Rams at the 49ers. Kyren Williams, the last couple weeks, numbers have gone up. This offense is hitting its stride. And last week, Kyren, 2 more touchdowns he found in that ball game, and the high-scoring victory versus the Buffalo Bills. So this week it's San Francisco, where their run defense hasn't been all that great this year, and I believe this could be another high-scoring game. Kyren's a must-start. Isaac Guerendo, if he plays in this game, he's a start. But right now, he left in the fourth quarter of last week's victory versus the Chicago Bears with a foot sprain. And Guerendo, he looked good, over 25 fantasy points in PPR leagues. He showed that speed. He showed the prowess of catching the football out of the backfield. So if he's in the lineup, he's a start in this one. Patrick Taylor will be a flex option if Guerendo's out, and he's going to be the starting running back. And he did have 7 carries for 25 yards, and he found the end zone. So if Taylor has to start this game, he's a flex. And if Guerendo plays, he's a start. Kansas City Chiefs at the Cleveland Browns. Isaiah Pacheco, a start. His workload went up. Week 14 victory versus the Chargers, 14 carries in that ball game. He was obviously the lead back easily over Kareem Hunt, where he came in only for a couple carries. So Isaiah Pacheco, is he getting healthy and more of a workload? He's a start. Kareem Hunt is sit. Like I said, the last couple weeks already, his numbers have gone down. The carries have gone down. And even this week versus former team, I don't think he'll see the field much. He's a sit. Nick Chubb, Jerome Ford, this sits. Nick Chubb, pretty much, he's a touchdown-dependent running back, unfortunately, since he's come off the ACL injury. But I believe next season, Nick Chubb will be better for fantasy owners. But coming off the injury, still not 100%, most likely is Nick Chubb. And a tough matchup versus the Chiefs, he's a sit. Jerome Ford, he's a change of pace, third down, passing down back, but he don't really have much fantasy value. And this whole offense, for the most part, hasn't done much all season long besides David Njoku and Jerry Jeudy being fantasy options. Cincinnati Bengals at the Titans. Chase Brown, he's a start each and every week. Ever since Morse went down with the neck injury, he stepped in, and he's been a top 10, 12 option weekly. And this week in a great matchup at the Titans, where they run defense, and defense as a whole for the most part this season has been bad. He's an easy start. Tony Pollard to start. Tony Pollard, the most consistent weapon on this offense for this Tennessee Titan team, where guys like Calvin Ridley, Westbrook Hakeem, they've been up and down all season long. And Tony Pollard can run in between the tackles, catch the football out of the backfield. And if they got to go to Mason Rudolph in this one, I think they're going to try to establish the run early and keep this high-powered Cincinnati offense off the field. So Pollard to start. Commanders at the Saints. Brian Robinson, he's locked in as a start for this Washington Commander team. And now with Austin Eckler out at least a few more weeks here with the concussion stuff, Brian Robinson, I think, will get a little bit more of a workload. I know Rodriguez and McNichols obviously going to get some work, but Robinson, physical running back, and I think this bye week's going to get him as healthy as he could be for the remainder of the season. So I think the bye week came at a good week for the Commanders, and especially Brian Robinson. So this week in a good matchup at the Saints with Tyrone Tracy had a solid ball game. He's a start. Alvin Kamara locked in weekly as a starter. Kendre Miller, I know he had some decent work in that ball game and found the end zone as well for the New Orleans Saints. But Kamara does it all, dual threat out of the backfield, top 5 option all season long. And this week versus middle of the pack Commander defense to start. Baltimore Ravens at the Giants. Derrick Henry, monster season in his first year with the Baltimore Ravens. And this week with an easy matchup versus the Giants that can't stop anyone. It wouldn't be surprising to me if Henry puts up 30, 35 fantasy points in PPR leagues. Tyrone Tracy, the lead back for this Giant team. It's been a solid rookie year. And this Giant team, to be honest, I think they're quarterback away of being a team that could put a lot of points on the board and possibly contend for a wild card spot. So Tyrone Tracy last week found the end zone once again. This week, they got to put points on the board. And at least with Tracy, he's a decent receiving back out of the backfield. So this week versus Baltimore, I actually like him going out there and being a nice RB2 for fantasy owners. Cowboys at the Panthers. Rico Dotto, he's been playing better football of late for this Dallas Cowboy team. And a solid back for this Cowboy team majority of the season, believe it or not. He's had more double-digit PPR games than single-digit games as Dotto. So this week with a good matchup at the Panthers. We know their defense gives up a lot of points. And Dotto, ever since Elliott's been removed pretty much to the backup role and not getting a lot of touches, he's been putting up numbers. And this week versus a Panther defense that's had trouble all season long, I think he goes out there, Dotto, and he's a good start option. Chuba Hubbard, he's a start for me in this ball game. Chuba Hubbard, it's been a solid season. And now Jonathan Brooks tore the ACL and is out for the year. So Brooks, he was working his way in over the last couple weeks. And now, unfortunately, going down with the ACL once again. Chuba Hubbard's going to get full workload, and this week it's a good matchup versus Cowboy defense that hasn't been good all season long. I know they've improved a little bit with Micah Parsons back in the lineup, but Chuba Hubbard, for the most part, he's been matchup proof anyway. New York Jets at the Jacksonville Jaguars. Breece Hall, I think he's going to come back in this ball game for the New York Jets. He was a late week scratch with the injury for this Jet team, and I thought Brandon Allen and Isaiah Davis filled in well for this New York Jet team. So if Breece Hall's in, obviously he's a start in an easy matchup with Jacksonville. And then if it's Allen and Isaiah Davis, those guys are going to be flex options at best, platooning in the backfield for the Jaguars. Tank Bigsby, he's a flex option. This Jet run defense isn't all that great. We saw Achane go out there, have a good game, and Tank Bigsby in between the tackles has been the better back all season long than Travis Etienne. He's a sit. He's not doing much all season long. He's definitely been a bust going late second, early third round in most fantasy drafts. He is Travis Etienne. And this Jet defense, I know, hasn't been good, but Etienne, the workload's gone down. We saw it last week, and we saw Bigsby be the more productive back overall this season. Miami Dolphins at the Houston Texans. These are top 10 options, both these running backs. Achane, ever since Tua's been back in the lineup, double-digit fantasy points, 15 or more, pretty much weekly. And this ball game, I think, should be high scoring. He's a start. Joe Mixon, what a move it was for them to get him in the offseason for Houston, where Cincinnati thought he was done, but Joe Mixon's having one of his best seasons of his good NFL career. So this week versus a Dolphin defense that can't stop anyone, he could be a top 6-7 option when it's all said and done next week. Indianapolis Colts at the Denver Broncos. Jonathan Taylor a start. I know the numbers haven't been great over the last month of the season for Jonathan Taylor, but now coming off a bye week, I think this offense is going to get more into the playbook. I think they're going to make things a little bit easier as well. And they're going to emphasize the run because this week it's a matchup versus one of the better defenses in the league. But Jonathan Taylor, I think they're going to try to run the football a lot with him and not have Anthony Richardson throw the football more than 20-25 times if they can help it. So Taylor, just on volume alone, I think could go out there and have a decent game. Javonte Williams, Jaleel McLaughlin. Just weekly, we don't know who's going to step up in this backfield. And pretty much it's not something I'm going to want to deal with unless you got no choice. But if you got to the playoffs with one of these running backs, then the rest of your team must be real good. But this week, even in a decent matchup versus Indianapolis, I don't want any part of it. There's no bye weeks. These guys shouldn't be in the lineup. Buffalo Bills at the Lions. James Cook, I know the numbers have dropped off a bit the last 2 out of 3 weeks, especially last week. Only 4.80 fantasy points, where it was the Josh Allen show, 6 total touchdowns in that game, 3 passing, 3 rushing touchdowns. But this week at Detroit, I think they get back to the run a little bit as Buffalo. They were down 21 points and had no choice but to throw the remainder of that ball game. So Cook's a start. Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, these guys are locked in weekly. Some weeks they'll have down weeks, and then some weeks they'll have big ball games. And this Bill defense gives up top 5 fantasy points to running backs all season. So the best 1-2 running back combo in the league, I think, goes out there in a high-scoring ball game and puts up points. Pittsburgh Steelers at the Eagles. Najee Harris start. He's been playing great football over the last few weeks. He is Najee Harris. He's using that power. He's finding the end zone. And this whole offense is opened up, believe it or not, with Russell Wilson stretching the field, the quarterback. So this week, even in a tough matchup versus a good defense, I have him as a start. Jaylen Warren is sitting now with every team playing, and there's no more bye weeks. Warren, some weeks he'll have a decent receiving game out of the backfield, and then weeks where they're leading and not trailing, he's not doing much. Even though I think this could be a game where Philly gets off to a good start and they have to chase points, but still in a playoff matchup, I think it's tough to trust Warren. He's a sit. Saquon Barkley, he's a start each and every week. He's trying to go for those 2,000 yards, and we'll see if he can get it with 4 games left on the season. So Barkley weekly, it's either 100 yards, it's either finding the end zone. And this week, even in a tougher matchup versus the Steelers, I think he goes out there, has a good game. New England Patriots at the Arizona Cardinals. Ramondre Stevenson, I put him in the starting lineup. Stevenson's still going to get a healthy workload. I know Antonio Gibson worked in a little bit, but this Cardinal defense, last week they got gashed by backup running back Zach Charbonnet. I know this offense can't throw the football like Seattle or has the weapons like Seattle with Metcalf and JSN, but I still believe Stevenson in Arizona could go out there, have a nice RB2 game. James Conner start. This Patriot defense can't stop anyone all season long. And Conner, he's a dual threat out of the backfield, catching the football, running between the tackles. And this week here, I think he goes out there, James Conner, and has a solid ball game. Tampa Bay Buccaneers at the Chargers. Rachaad White, big ball game last week where he was all over the field, found the end zone on a goal line stamp. And obviously some of that has to do with Bucky Irvin, where he got hurt with a back locked up on him and he couldn't give it a go after the first quarter. So Rachaad White is a start. I know this Charger defense, they've been a solid unit pretty much all season, but Rachaad White, one of the best receiving backs out of the backfield. And Bucky Irvin, we'll see if he could play in this game. And Bucky Irvin, it's been a great rookie season, so if he does play, he's a start for me as Bucky Irvin. This is a nice 1-2 combo. I believe it's right up there with Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery with the same two backs in the backfield showing production. So Irvin this week, if he plays, I would start him. Gus Edwards, Kamini Vidal are both sits. Just not enough out of both these players. Edwards last week, if he didn't find the end zone, he would only had 3.5 fantasy points. And Kamini Vidal, he got some work as well, where it was only 10-8 touches total between Edwards and Vidal. And Vidal, the better receiving back out of the backfield. Edwards is more short yardage and early downs work. But both these running backs in a Week 15 ball game, I can't trust their sit. Packers at the Seahawks, Josh Jacobs each and every week. He's worked into the high volume. There's no one, obviously, over there that's going to take work from him. And Josh Jacobs, it's been a good season, especially the second half of the year. We've seen some big games out of him. So this week in a matchup at Seattle, where their run defense is middle of the pack, I think Jacobs could go out there and work his way into a decent ball game once again. Kenneth Walker, if he plays, he's a start. And obviously Zach Charbonnet starts. I don't know what this Seattle Seahawks team is going to do after coming off a game like that. Zach Charbonnet deserves to at least get some touches in the ball game, but we saw it early in the season. Charbonnet had 2 good starts under his belt, and then on that Monday night game, I believe it was Week 4 at the Lions, Kenneth Walker returned and he had 3 touchdowns in that ball game. So right now, like I said, it's a tough situation, no doubt about it. But if Kenneth Walker is out, Zach Charbonnet, he's a nice start for fantasy owners. So this week, you got to pay attention to the practice reports, because obviously that's a big situation over there. Chicago Bears at the Minnesota Vikings. DeAndre Swift, it's been an up and down year. First month of the season, he did nothing. Then the second half of the year, he picked it up. And now the last 3-4 weeks, he hasn't done much, is DeAndre Swift. So in a tough matchup at the Minnesota Vikings, at best, he's a flex option. Obviously, there's no other option in that backfield. They got Travis Homer, Roscoe Johnson in concussion protocol. But those guys aren't starters. There's nothing more but change of pace backs and backups. So Swift, he's still going to get a decent workload, and he's a flex. Aaron Jones a start. His numbers have definitely dropped off over the last few weeks here. And Cam Akers, he's been worked into the lineup a little more as well. But I think they're trying to preserve him for the playoffs a little bit, is this Minnesota Viking team. But this week, a good matchup versus a bad team. A great track record against, obviously, all those years with the Packers. And this week, he's a start. Final Monday night, second of the 2 Monday nights. And final game of the week, Atlanta Falcons at the Vegas Raiders. Bijan Robinson, he's locked in as a start each and every week. What a season it's been for him. And it was great where he won in fantasy drafts. 5th to 6th overall when he's lived up to the build as Bijan Robinson. The numbers have gone way up this season with a new coaching staff. And obviously Kirk Cousins at quarterback, opening up the running game. And this week in a matchup at possibly the worst defense in the league at the Vegas Raiders, he's a must start and could have a top 2 or 3 ball game out of all backs this week. And Sincere McCormick, it's been a decent run for him over the last few weeks here for this Vegas Raider team, where Amir Dula, he hasn't been a threat to him over the last few games. Amir White, Alexander Madison, they're banged up. I doubt they're going to bring them back and put them into the lineup. And at least McCormick's doing decent in between the tackles. I know he's a smaller back, but his yards have been there, and he's made the most of his opportunity, getting a guaranteed deal as well on the active roster. So he would be a flex option. So that's running back start sits every matchup for Week 15 of the fantasy football season.